ghosts in the hallway whispering your name. The paranormal, the unexplained. Become a VIP, get the inside scoop. Unlock the mysteries, be part of the group. Live streaming stories are talking to you. Super chats buzzing, join the group. Untold Radio Network, the secrets come alive. New episodes daily, the mysteries thrive. Great guests, super chat, it's a wild member ride. Share and subscribe, join the side where truth can hide. So if you've got the guts and you want to explore, tune into the Untold, it's what you're looking for. From aliens to ghosts and all that's unseen. Untold Radio Network, where the world's mysteries convene.
Good morning, monsters, and welcome to Monsters on the Edge on the Untold Radio Network. I am your host, Barnaby Jones, and today we are live here in studio. So, guys, if you have any questions or comments throughout the show, throw them in the comments section, and we'll get to them as soon as possible. We have a busy week here for Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Society. This Wednesday, I'm going to be at the Edgerton, Wisconsin Public Library talking about cryptid creatures of Wisconsin and Illinois. So if you guys are around, head on over to the Edgerton Library. It's down by the Milwaukee area. Oh, I'm sorry, Madison area. We are also going to be this Saturday at the Bell City Paracon down in Summers, Wisconsin. That's just past Milwaukee, down by the Racine area. There we go. Now we'll get them right. We're going to be at the Bell City Paracon. We are bringing out the Haydn Adventure Traveling Exhibit as well, doing the presentation on that. So we're going to have the exhibit, the museum display, and the presentation available for anybody interested in Bigfoot in Upper Michigan is going to be what we are talking about at the Bell City Paracon. And then, guys, November 23rd and 24th, we are going to be at CryptidCon in Lexington, Kentucky. A huge amount of awesome names there. Check out this list here. Everybody from Bigfoot to UFOs to paranormal is going to be at this event. We're going to be as well. So if you guys are anywhere in Lexington, Kentucky, this is the weekend before Thanksgiving. Come on out and check it out. And then November 30th, we are back in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin for the Soul and Synergy Expo. And in December 1st, we are back in Milwaukee in the Brewery District for Krampus Fest. Busy end of the year here coming up for us, guys. So if you are anywhere around those places, come out and check it out, and we'll be there. All right. If you want to show your support for all things here on the Untold Radio Network, here's how.
Hey, Untold Radio Network fans. Want exclusive perks and to support our channel? Introducing our YouTube membership program with 3 amazing levels. Get loyalty badges that level up to different cryptids the longer you're a supporter. How cool is that? You'll also get access to custom Bigfoot emojis and priority in chat. Upgrade to Backstage Pass for exclusive wallpapers, photos, status updates, discounted books, and merchandise. Go all in with the producer level for everything mentioned plus member shoutouts. Ready for an enhanced experience? Join now, pick your membership level, and let's make this journey even more exciting together.
All right, guys. Again, we are live today in studio. So my guest is here to answer any of your questions or comments as we go. Today, my guest is Scott Taylor. He has had his first encounter with Sasquatch in October of 2005 and has been a BFRO investigator ever since 2006. He is from the Washington state and has investigated more than 220 reports and attended 55 expeditions. He has spoken at many conferences in the Pacific Northwest. To date, he has seen 7 Sasquatch individuals, and his journey has taken him from the ape caveman point of view through the entire spectrum of woo. Scott's specialty is habituation sites and behavior. And now, he is here to share all that knowledge with you. So please welcome to the show, Scott Taylor. Welcome to the show, man.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Barnaby.
It's good to have
Appreciate
you.
being on your show.
Awesome. Good to have you. Good to have you. So your first experience here,
Mhm.
were you already interested in Bigfoot at the time, or what happened there?
Actually, I'm a lifelong hunter, and and as a kid growing up in the 70s, I remember the Patterson Gimlin film and the TV shows, Leonard Nimoy, all of that, but I never knew if they were real or not. I was just kind of ambivalent about it, and figured, well, I don't know if they're there or not, so I'm not even going to worry about it. So, but I got a big surprise October 2005.
I bet. So were you out hunting then, or were you out hiking?
I was out hunting. At the time, I was single and I had a girlfriend, and she was with me, and we'd spent all day long watching over a clear cut, backs up to a great big old cedar stump. And it was almost dark, and by we didn't have GPS at the time that told us, what time exactly sunset was. Mm-hmm. So they had tables, and you had to leave the woods or unload and be heading out, after legal shooting hours. And so that's what we did. And it was still a little bit light, and walking the logging roads out towards the gate where we were parked, about a 1.5 mile journey, we ran into a big wall of stink. And my first thought was, who's burning their garbage around here? But it's private timber company land. You're not allowed to camp, and you can't have fires for sure. So I dismissed that pretty quick. And I looked around and I couldn't see anything. And so we kept walking and went up to a T intersection and had to make a left-hand turn. The T intersection was at an old... Oh, I disappeared. Oh, there, I'm back.
Yep.
Anyway, we had to make a left-hand turn, and about 100 yards further, there was a big culvert where the creek was going underneath. And the girlfriend looked down to the left, downstream, and says, "What the F is that?" And I looked down there, and all I could see in the gloom was a big shape. And it was kind of swaying back and forth, and sticks popping and that kind of thing. Something definitely there. But I wasn't connecting anything, to Bigfoot at the time. And so, I said, well, maybe it's a bear or something down there. Let's just keep going. And we kept going, went about 200 yards further, and the road made a little gentle turn to the right. And as soon as we went out of sight of that spot, it evidently had walked up onto the road, and it started vocalizing really loud. And, you're pretty close. And so, we stopped, and I'm listening. I'm going through the litany of what are the different animals that make that sounds, or birds. And it was none of them. And then I realized, oh yeah, the stink. Oh, this is a Bigfoot. Let's get the heck out of here. We were afraid because we didn't know whether they were dangerous or not. They're certainly big. We knew that from what people had said. And so, we got out of there. I went home. I got on the internet at the time. It was dial up. Anyway, I found the BFRO website, and they had some recordings on there. And I found same voice singing a different song, but it was the same kind of creature. And so, yeah, that's it. So, Yeah, I went into work on Monday and told everybody, and became the Bigfoot guy. But it was surprising how many coworkers came up to me in the days after to tell me of their experiences. And it turned out I was working with a half a dozen guys that had really good eyeball sightings. So it's not uncommon. It's just people don't talk about it so much.
Mm-hmm.
At least they used to. Now they talk about it all the time.
That's a very good point to make. A lot of people say, well, if these things are real, if they're really out there, why don't more people see them with all the hunters and stuff out there? And,
Mm-hmm.
I know you've had all the experiences and the sighting reports and stuff as well. And, from my experience of doing the show and my own research, and there's a lot of people out there that have seen these things.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's just the general public.
Yeah.
I always say that Bigfooting is like a tree, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have all the leaves of the tree up here that all the people that just watched Finding Bigfoot, and they see, oh yeah, they may exist, whatever, I've heard of them, and you got that little bit of knowledge, the Patterson Gimlin film and stuff like that, and then you got the trunk. Those are the people that have done a little bit more research, and they're like, well, yeah, maybe they might exist, I heard
Mm-hmm.
stories about it. And then you got the roots, which is people like you and me that have actually gone out there, done the research, talked to other people, and go,
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah, there's a lot more to this stuff than people actually think, and there's so much more out there. So
yeah, it leads you down a deep rabbit hole for sure. Yeah, and there's a lot of people like me and like you who are doing this, and when you get together, it doesn't matter if you've been working in Georgia your whole time and you meet up with somebody from Washington State and you start talking about, well, what have you experienced? And you find out they're doing the same things everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter where you're at, you're going to find the same behaviors.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's one of the main things I focus on here. There's so many shows out there that talk about the sighting reports. Tell me about your sighting. Tell me about your sighting. And then let's discuss whether or not these things are real or not. We're way past that, and I love like Bigfoot and Beyond with Cliff and Bobo and stuff. Those guys get into the science of it. Okay, tell me your sighting report. Okay, now great. That's all well and good. But now let's talk about, what have you learned? What are you doing out there? What science is being done behind this? And that's one of the reasons, I wanted to have you on, because you're one of the people that's out there doing that work and doing the research and stuff, and focusing on these areas. That's your main focus is habituation sites.
Right.
And that is so key, because those are places, like it's a petri dish. You can go out there, you can conduct experiments and say, okay, well, if this works, a certain way, that's great. If this doesn't, and try different things and see what you get. So maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves here, but so let's go from there. So you found the BFRO, you joined the BFRO, and how did that? Obviously it's kind of like a natural state, like you said. You dove right into this thing. You found all that. So how did that happen for you?
So there's two ways that people cope with having a sighting. They either block it out, or they want to learn everything that they can because they want to explain it. Well, I have an engineering background, and so I'm wanting to explain all this stuff. I want to understand how it works and what they are, whether it's something mechanical or something like this. I want to know what's going on. And so I started reading. At lunchtime, I would pull up the various Bigfoot websites and read the old stories, and the Albert Osman story, those kind of things. Ape Canyon, so a lot from locally around here that are good. And then I saw that the BFRO had these expeditions that the public could go on. And so I paid my fee and signed up, met Matt Moneymaker. We went over in the Cascades and absolutely had a blast. And it was like, I just met 40 people that are been friends for life. And we had sightings on the trip, heard vocalizations. I heard the samurai chatter behind the camp. And as a bonus, a guy named Mel Scahan, who's a Yakima Indian forester, brought Bob Gimlin in because their neighbors brought Bob Gimlin in to talk to everybody. So that was a super treat, getting to meet Bob Gimlin, and you hear him tell the story around the campfire with details you'll never hear anywhere else. And then Mel and I spent a whole day by ourselves out east of camp, up in the wilderness area, and he taught me everything. It was like Bigfoot 101 with a fire hose, but it got me off on the right foot because I learned the Native American take on it. And my thinking is that they know more than anybody else because they've been living with them for hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of years. They know what they are, but non-tribal people tend to discount what they say as being just their legends and their myths. And I hate those words because they're telling you based on their experience, and you should listen to them. And if you can get somebody that will trust you and tell you, you'll learn a lot. But most of the time, it's really hard to break through that barrier. And I just got lucky with Mel, and Mel and I are like brothers now. We've been that way for the whole time. And but that's really the best way to learn. So I got a good start. I got a good network of people. We started networking and doing things. And then we got noticed for doing that. And so I was invited to become an investigator. And I said, sure, I'll do it. And they set me up with a login on the backside of the BFRO website that the public can't see, where all the reports are. And I just started working it. And it was like, yeah, I was doing 2-3 a month. And I did that for a long time. And then I ended up with a higher job at Boeing where I was working, and I had to kind of back off on that, but not completely. And then when I retired, I was able to pick it back up again and start doing it. So I've been doing it pretty faithfully for the last 3-4 years.
That's awesome. Yeah, Mel has been on my show here as well before, a couple months back, I think, right before his convention he was on. So if anybody's interested, go back and check the archives of Monsters on the Edge, and he was on there as well. He was super interesting, very awesome guy. Yeah,
I've always said that there are no experts, but the one exception I would make is Mel Scahan. He knows more than anybody else that I know of.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's a really good point with talking about your indigenous people and stuff like that. I always say I do a whole presentation on cryptozoology and stuff, as well as I talk about like the tribes and stuff over in the Congo, and they talk about these animals, like from anything from the gorilla, the okapi, and then like even Mokele and Membe and other weirder creatures like that. And you take this for granted, saying, well, it's folklore, it's mythology, like you said. But yeah, but these people, they're living off the land, literally living off the land every single day. And their life depends on what they see, what they hear, and knowing what's going to eat them or what they can eat in the wilderness.
Yeah.
And there's a huge difference between that and, no offense, a hunter that goes out there in the woods that, okay, I've hunted my whole life, but you don't live out there.
Right.
You don't know every single sound of every creature and every twig, every path out there like these other people do and did for years and eons and whatever before any of this other stuff. And you can't just dismiss that, as folklore and mythology. I mean, this was somebody's reality. And there's exaggerations and stuff to that, like even the gorilla and stuff was supposed to have all these mythical magical powers and stuff to the tribes and that, but that's their beliefs, and there's still facts rooted in that, and you definitely have to take that for what it's worth. So
right. Yeah and like you mentioned, my specialty to kind of morphed into being habituations. And like the people that live out in the forest, the tribes, they're hyper vigilant about what's around them because their life depends on staying away from danger plus understanding what's going on. Well, likewise, the habituation witness in the rural areas are very similar. They're very tuned into the sounds of what's going on around them and who's around, and So there's a very close correlation to that as far as being observant.
Absolutely, I bet. We're gonna dig into that in a second. I want to back up one bit here though,
Okay.
and talk about, so we talked earlier already about how, people think that there's, not that many of these things. They don't know that they're out there in that. So from somebody that's been doing this and taking all these reports and stuff like that, like you said, the back door to the BFRO here, how many reports do you say, like, on average you get, like in a month, in a year? What does that look like to you guys?
Well, in Washington State, I bet you we get 200-300 a year. And it's a variety of everything from I heard a funny sound to I saw something 5 feet in front of me. It runs the gamut. I know in this state, especially since the Finding Bigfoot show came on, we got so dumped on with reports that we couldn't keep up. And so there's probably 1,200 reports in the database that haven't even been followed up on. And may probably never will be, because there's only a few of us doing this. Although there's a 30 or 40 on the roster, life happens and people's interests move on and their circumstances change. Maybe, they start having kids, that kind of thing, and they stop doing it. So there's only like 3 or 4 of us that are actually reliably doing this kind of work. But right now there's the last Bigfoot report I just took, and need to do a little more follow up on, is report number 77,777. 5 sevens. Wow. So that's probably going to be a lucky report there, and it was from not too far from where I live here, over by town of Shelton. So wife and I'll go follow up on that and see if there's, and it was from like 15 years ago. So, there's not going to be any evidence, but sometimes you can find a trail. And then sometimes maybe there is some evidence, because, they do leave these little subtle signs that, this is the way to go, maybe a tree twist and pointed in the direction that you're supposed to go. And sometimes it's like an unusual rock pile, just something that tells them, this is where you're supposed to go. And most people don't pick up on it. I learned to pick up on it, and I look for it when I walk my dogs around where I live. And we find stuff out on these logging roads. I always say, look for order in the midst of disorder. Yeah. And you'll be surprised what's there, because they're around.
So we got to ask, now that you kind of brought this up with saying that you've gone out and found stuff near your house, and that, have you had stuff happen like on your property, at your house, around your area there?
Yeah. We actually, when we moved out this way from the Tacoma area, I was looking for a place that they would feel comfortable being around, because I don't want to live anywhere where they're not around. And so we thought, well, there's not a lot of choices of places to live out here, because there's not a lot of people. This is a small county. I was talking to our county auditor. He says, there's only 11,000 voters in the whole county. We have one incorporated town in this county. So, everything is it's all timber company. And so it was what I wanted. And it was funny, because we were putting out glyphs and rock stacks and offerings, giftings. We, put out peanut butter and apples and stuff. Nothing touched anything. And then we planted 4 fruit trees. They appreciated the fruit trees, evidently, because that was the kickoff. One night about 8 p.m., it was a January. Susan and I are, already in bed just watching TV. Our granddaughter was staying with us at the time, so she was in the next bedroom over. And we have 2 Labrador retrievers too, and they were asleep. And one walked within, 20, 30 feet of our bedroom window and let out this great, big, huge howl. And, it's like the kind of howl Mel Scahan does, the long howl. And I jumped up and I'm like, big grin on my face. I'm going, oh, he's right outside the door, right outside the window, and the dogs were absolutely silent. They didn't make a sound. And then our granddaughter comes running in. What was that? And I says, oh, it's just a Bigfoot. He won't hurt you. Go to bed. Go back to bed. And then she would tell me that she would hear the sound of little girls talking outside her window. So there's juveniles around here, but they don't come around very often. We see sometimes real subtle signs that they've been around, maybe a glyph here and there, but they're not hanging around our house like I hope that they would be. I think that this is, there's too much timber activity going on, timber cutting, that kind of thing. And so it's not their favorite spot, I guess, but they're around.
Very cool.
So we have had activity.
That's awesome. Awesome. I love how you get up and you're like, oh, it's a Bigfoot. And most people are like, what is that? And no, yeah. All right. So my takeaway from this story though, is, you hear a lot of people that do the gifting, like you were talking about, leaving stuff out there, and that kind of goes two ways in what I've kind of taken from this, like these creatures aren't looking for a snack. They're not looking for a handout. They have food. Otherwise they wouldn't be in the area.
Yeah.
So what I'm taking away from this is, okay, you're putting stuff out. They don't need it, whatever. But now that you've put a reliable food source that they know, your tree is going to bloom, it's going to produce food at this time of year, that they can come, and now they have a reliable food source that they can come to, and not whenever you put it out or something like that. And that may have been, in my opinion, what changed that. What do you make out of that, being, more familiar with the habituation stuff?
So they watch us intently, and we may never see them. But they do see us, and they watch, how do we treat our animals? What do we do with our land? Do we keep it neat and tidy and clean? Are we throwing garbage all over the place? Because there are places around here that are like that, old cars, junk cars, and, mess, is one, I don't know how people live that way, but we like to keep our place neat and tidy. And so they see that, and I think they make a judgment, this is a safe person. This is a nice person. And so they're more willing to at least come near. I don't think they're necessarily looking for a buddy, but, I would love it if they would come out and sit around our fire ring with us and swap stories, that would be awesome. I wouldn't even try and take pictures. I would just enjoy it, but they're a little more furtive than that. And so, you take what you can get. They don't really hit our gifting sites at all, but 15 miles from here as a crow flies, when we could get into that warehouser land, we had a site that we would put gifts out, and they would take it all the time. And we knew it was them because they were leaving their fingerprints in the watermelon rinds, and they would take the apples, and they would leave glyphs to tell us that they've been there. They would leave gifts to tell us, thank you. And also the habituation sites that I've worked, gifting was a very important part of that. And they have a certain way about them when it comes to taking gifts too. Don't expect it to happen. It takes a while before they trust you. I know they're used to the people who live there, but when somebody new like me comes in, they go, "Oh, here's company. Let's scram," and you might not see them. One particular site, they got used to me. They would hang around, but they would never take the gift I left until I left. Mm-hmm. And it's usually a platter of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and but they never take them all. They don't, if it was a raccoon or a bear, they'd all be gone.
Yeah.
So they will leave you some, so that you have something to eat too. So that tells me they're not a dumb animal. They're not an ape. They're a person, because they're thinking about you too. And that's important.
Very much. Very much. So much stuff I want to get into here. We are live today on the show. So today's show is not pre-recorded. Scott actually has time to come on during my regularly scheduled time. So we are here in studio. If you guys have any questions, Foot Clan here has been very, he had to get back to work, but he said that Shahala Sasquatch name dropped you to him the other night.
Oh,
And it
Salish.
was really cool.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. And he was very cool to put the name to the face.
Yeah.
So awesome.
Yeah. That's Sarah and John Brown.
Cool.
Yeah. Awesome people. Good friends.
So yeah, he's got a lot to say over here about some of the TV shows and stuff like that. So if you guys check that out, but he's going back to work. But if you guys have any other questions or comments, put them in the comments and we'll get them in here for Scott. So one of the things that I've kind of noticed in my research in that is a trend of when fire shows up where it normally shouldn't be, right? So if somebody goes out in the woods and they have a little campfire or something where not a campsite, but just like going out in the woods or, behind their house or something where there usually wasn't a fire. This is something that tends to bring them in and draw their attention. And I'm wondering, have you had these kind of encounters or that story and how familiar you're with that trope?
Yeah, that's anything you do that is unusual, they have to come check it out. It's like, who's in our woods and what are they doing? They want to know whether you're a threat or not, whether they have to worry about you or not. And, if like you said, a fire shows up, a little campfire, they'll, what's going on over there? And they'll come peek. Now, I bet you they do it almost all the time. But you never notice it because, they're very expert at sneaking up on people without being seen. So, and they're just going to check you out, see what you do. Things that we do on expeditions and, small little private groups that go out is, play music, lead gifts like we already talked. But, have fun, laugh, sing, tell jokes, be friendly, and that kind of thing makes them even more curious. It's like we become their TV, and they got to see what's going on. Now, I went out with Barb Shoup's group. Barb Shoup has a group over in Greenwater, and she takes them out. They go out once a month, and one of her techniques is to have story time. And that's where everybody's just around the campfire. They're not out doing night walks or anything like that. And they're telling Bigfoot stories. And believe it or not, they'll come in. You won't necessarily see them, but they'll be there in the shadows and they're listening. A cool trick, I thought this is genius. They got these little balls. You could probably buy them on Amazon. They're little clear balls and they have lights inside. And if you set them down, the lights go out. But when you pick them up, the lights just go on. And so they had a number of these set out, and we're all exactly, that's it.
I knew I had them sitting here.
Yeah. And she had those set out, and it's all dark outside the campfire ring. And all of a sudden, one of those lights gets up in the air and floats about 8 feet and then gets put back down. We couldn't see what was holding it, but it was one of them for sure, because we did in the morning find evidence that they had been there, listening to the stories. And so we were telling stories. Our expeditions last 2 years, BFRO expeditions, we had a family, and one of the young men, a teenager, was learning how to play bagpipes. And so he started playing bagpipes before we go out on a night walk, and it worked. That was an unusual sound that is not scary. It's intriguing. It piques their curiosity, and good activity. They were right in camp that night. Yep, it was fun. So out of the box thinking with that kind of thing, it helps a lot. They got to come see. They got to come see what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that these things, they're ghost balls. They're
Ghost
cat
balls.
toys, yeah. But we use them in the paranormal industry to answer yes or no questions and stuff. And we sell these at our booth when we go to conventions and that. And Alexander Petikoff, if you're familiar from Small Town Monsters, bought these for me to hang in trees up in Alaska when he was going. So yeah, that was the first time I've heard of people using them for Bigfooting. But as soon as you started talking about it, I'm like, I know exactly what you're talking about. What was the other thing I was gonna say about that? The one group that is in Wisconsin here that goes out quite a bit, they have two different techniques as well that are really interesting. One of them is using singing bowls.
Okay.
Like a Tibetan singing bowl, you run the thing around the edge, it hums. I've heard of a couple different people doing that. And then they also go out and they broadcast whale sounds.
We did that too.
Oh, that was really cool. And I had walked away from the group when I was out with them that night, and I heard this really weird sound. And even if I hadn't known they were I didn't know they were gonna do it, but I knew what it was. And I'm just like, that is the weirdest sound to hear out in the woods. And I'm like, but that's a whale. Oh, that's what they're doing, you know. But it's just a weird sound to hear out in the woods. But it fit. It's kind of got that Bigfooty tone to it, and I don't know.
Yeah, we did that. One of the guys had a pickup truck with a giant speakers. I mean, the kind of speakers you use at a rock concert.
Yep.
And he had those up there, and he played humpback whale songs for an hour, and then he, put that away, went back to the main base camp, and we were all out scattered all over doing night walks. And then about an hour later, somebody gets on the radio and said, "Hey, are you still playing those humpback whale songs?" And he said, "No, we're done." He says, "Well, they're singing them back to you." So they heard it one time and they were able to repeat it back. That's not a dumb wood ape by any stretch. That's a really smart person. That's the way I look at it. So be able to hear it one time and then sing it back perfectly. Wow. Yeah, that's America's Got Talent kind of territory.
I mean, it's, there's some researchers and stuff too that say these things are a little like autistic. And that's a very autistic trait, is hearing these sounds and then mimicking them, just because there's a lot of people like that. My mom's neighbor, like every time a car door slams or a dog barks, he's like, woof, woof, woof. And he'll just repeat it back and stuff. And it's interesting that if they do have these traits, people sort things, like they leave out gifting stuff and they'll sort it to different colors or things like that too. And that's again another very autistic trait. It's Christopher Noel has written a whole book and series of books and stuff on that theory, and he's been on the show a couple times as well. But so I mean that it all fits in those characteristics there. Like
if they've eaten an animal, the bones will be laid out in a very logical sequence and very neatly placed. It's like an OCD kind of trait that they do that. So they do it all over.
Interesting. Okay, so we've kind of skated around this topic as well, but you've gone from thinking they're caveman creatures all the way through the woo aspects of that. So where are you right now as far as like being able to, all these sighting reports, the habituations and stuff? Where are you on that spectrum now? Where are you thinking these creatures fall?
Well, they are definitely people. Anybody who's followed the DNA studies, I met Dr. Melba Ketchum and some other people, they always come back with human DNA. The male DNA is a human something hybrid. That the something is not in the database of the billion different things that they have in there. So there's something that went on way back in the past that is still evident today. They're terribly intuitive. It seems like they know what you're going to do before you know what you're going to do. They watch intently, but they have some other abilities. One of the things that that I read about when I was just learning about this. I read Tom Powell's book, The Locals.
Okay.
An excellent book to start with. And he had one story about them cloaking. And I thought, well, that's weird. I have no reference point to go, how does something just before your eyes become invisible? And then it happened to me. One walked across the trail in front of me. He was cloaked. It looked like on the Predator movie. And when he got into the trees on the left side of the trail, that was real thick, we could see the trees move as he was walking through them. And then he stopped and he whistled at us. And the person that was with me was really good at whistling. I'm not any good at it, but she whistled back and forth with him. And they had this little exchange about 4 times. And then he turned and walked away, and we could hear him walking away. So, there's, my personal experience with one that was cloaked. Then Barb Shoop got her cloaker video. I don't know if you've seen that. She keeps her iPhone attached to her walking stick with a battery pack, and it's recording video 100% of the time. Yep. And she, by accident, got one that you could not see anything until it dropped down from standing to all fours and ran off. Super excellent cloaker video. Since then, other people have gotten videos of them cloaked. And it turns out it's probably their normal state that they prefer to be in, is why people never see them, and that they have to put some effort into becoming visible to us, which seems counterintuitive, but, that's just what we've observed. So, I'm not going to argue with people about can they do it or can't they do it. I've seen them do it, and so they have these abilities, these special talents, like cloaking. If you've ever watched the Flash of Beauty series, they have some guys from down near Coos Bay, Oregon, that watched one crouch down and turn into an orb form and take off. So weird stuff happens. Maybe we can't explain it. That's why they call it paranormal, because we can't explain it. But doesn't mean it's not happening. And, and if you took somebody that was from the year 1500 and you magically took them here, and you went to Walmart and you went up to the door and the door just opens, mm-hmm. They'd go, what kind of sorcery is this? Because to them, that technology is so far advanced of their ability to understand it. To them, it's magic. And I think the same thing's going on with the Bigfoots. They have some abilities that are so far beyond our normal understanding that a lot of people they can't believe it's real. But if you keep Bigfooting long enough, you get field time out there, you're going to run into this stuff. Mind speak also, mental slideshows, those kind of things. I've experienced some of those myself. I've got a lot of friends that have experienced them. The zapping, how are they doing that? They can definitely, zap you. And so, we call it infrasound because we don't know what else to call it. We don't know if that's exactly what it is, but it seems to be, because it feels like people hear a low, very deep tone growl, and then the tone starts to get even lower, and then it disappears from our ability to hear it. And now we're just feeling it in our chest. It's vibrating in resonance with our body. So they're doing something there. So you're going to run into it if you do this long enough. That's all I got to say about it, really.
It's with a lot of this stuff, though, like you said, it's paranormal, it's weird, it's that. But, we talked earlier as well, about the indigenous people and, having living off the land and that.
Right.
And,
mm-hmm.
I have people on my team that are mediums, psychics, intuitives, 100% legit. Like I have they have pulled out stuff that there's no way that they should have known, and verifiable information.
Absolutely. Yeah.
About locations and stuff that they should know, look at like remote viewing and stuff like that too. Mm-hmm. So if humans can do this, then why can't other animals like Bigfoot and stuff that are very natural and aren't, staring at their phones all day and looking up, we always talk about like how people like, how many phone numbers do you know? I mean, like you're older and stuff, older generation that, but the younger people today, I mean, what do you know? Like one phone number, your parents, and that's about it.
Yeah.
Everything else, you just Google it and okay, I need to call this store.
Yeah. Right.
We don't have any of that anymore. And that's just basic stuff that even we would think of. So if you take all that away and put these animals out in nature, and that their mental abilities, their psychic abilities, all their stuff like that, is heightened beyond anything that we're capable of anymore now, that we've evolved out of.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
who's to say that these paranormal abilities of cloaking and mind speak and that isn't something that everyone could do if they were, and people supposedly do this as well, so it's just a lot of stuff that people don't consider. And if you took the time to go back and realize that all this stuff is possible, well, then why isn't it possible for these things to? Why is it paranormal?
Yeah.
Why can't it just be they're living their best lives?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think we can all do it. I don't know about the cloaking. Maybe they could teach us how to do that. I don't know. But the mind speak part, the, telepathy, the, like you said, remote viewing, they demonstrate they do stuff like that, but people do too. You got the Aboriginal people in Africa, or not Africa, but Australia, and somebody will say, oh, Uncle Fred's coming to visit next week. And Uncle Fred lives 200 miles away and there's no roads between you and him and there's no communication. And then a week later, here comes Uncle Fred. They know that stuff. They know how to do that communication. And, and when you're out in the forest and it's quiet and your head's clear and your mind is open and you're living in existence where you're just the way God created you, your pineal gland is fully functional instead of being calcified like ours through the water, the things they put in our water and that kind of stuff. You find out we can do a lot of that stuff too. And I think we do it and don't even realize we're doing it. I can remember one time when I was much younger, living down in Arizona, and the phone rang. And before my wife could pick it up, I said, that's Mary, and she just had a baby. My wife looked at me like, what are you talking about? How could you know that? And she picked up the phone and, hi, Mary, you just had a baby? Really? I didn't try to do that. It just came. And I think if we just kind of relax with it and, we can do it too. Some people are much better than others. And it seems like there's more women that are good at it than us guys. But there are some guys that do it. And I know one guy, it drove him nuts. He said, I got to move away from here because, they're just talking to me all the time and I can't cope with it because it's like 3 or 4 talking to me all at the same time. And I said, well, go ahead and move away. You can move 150 miles away and they'll be there when you get there. So that's not going to work. So you got to figure out how to deal with it. So I said, just talk to them, and tell them, hey, I can't hear you guys all at one time. Talk to me one at a time. And he did, and they did. So yeah, there's a lot to that. But again, it's a thing you have to experience and you have to learn by doing. I can't sit here and tell people and expect them to believe me. They have to get it on their own. We can say, hey, here's a clue. Think about this, but you got to do it on your own to get it.
Absolutely. And people, I'm sure there's people out there thinking we're crazy talking about this stuff right now, but they're watching it because it's Bigfoot. Like, how crazy are you watching this?
Well,
you've already slipped a little bit down that rabbit hole. You just got to let yourself go now.
Yeah. Well, you think about it for the general public, and this is who the BFRO plays to by intent. The general public, the idea of Bigfoot even existing is paranormal. That's a stretch for most people out there. Now, these days with the TV shows and a lot of the evidence that has become more normalized. Mm-hmm. But then taking that next step into the what we call the woo stuff, the mind speak and the cloaking and, all of that kind of stuff. When you get into doing this and become interested into it, you're going to run into it. You can't help but run into it unless you really close your mind off. And there are some people that will do that. They will not entertain anything other than what they can touch and see and hear and taste and smell and, your five senses. That's it. If it's not within those five senses, it doesn't exist in their mind. And that's just how some people cope, I guess. So, but like we said, the idea of Bigfoot existing is outside the box for most people's sense of reality. But once that box gets kind of blown up by having an eyeball sighting, now it's like, well, what else is outside that box? And that takes you into, the ghosts, the other creatures out there in the dark, and there are other creatures besides Bigfoots. The UFOs, the ETs, that kind of stuff, it's like, oh, well, maybe there's more going on over here, and is society and the media lying to us about, because, when you think about it, when there's a Bigfoot report and it gets on, say, a regional television, a news show, they always make it into a joke. Yep. Always. They got to keep it as a joke because I don't think they can cope with the idea of it being real. Mm-hmm. And here we are. We're out here. We're wanting to go shake hands with an 8-foot tall, 1,000-pound, man, the wild person, and the idea of even existing scares them beyond what they can cope with.
Absolutely. Well, we are coming up on the last part of our show here, guys. So if you have any questions or comments, throw them in the comments section. We got plenty of people out there watching. So if you have any questions for Scott, throw them in the comments and we'll get them in before the end of the show because we are live in studio today.
Bring it on.
I said that. Now I lost my train of thought of where I was going. So you made a good point about the BFRO there as well, that I think is good to point out because everyone says, well, they don't entertain the woo or any of the odder stuff. They take just the flesh and blood facts and throw them out there. And I've heard this a lot, but what you said there makes a lot of sense, that they're catering to everyone. And right. If, I'm sure you're familiar with David Paulides.
Yep.
Okay, Missing 411, David Paulides and stuff. And he's spoken at Bigfoot conventions and that. But to my knowledge, and this is what I've heard, is that he will not admit or say any of this stuff has anything to do with Bigfoot.
Absolutely. He just tells you the facts of what happened. He doesn't try to infer that it was Bigfoot. I mean, he's closer to inferring that it's aliens doing stuff than it is Bigfoot. My wife's a big fan. Easy Christmas present. He's got a new book. I go buy it, Yeah. But also, as far as Bigfoot stuff goes, go watch his 20-hour Bigfoot 101 class. Really, really, really good. And there's a test at the end. So I watched it just because I wanted to see what does he learn compared to what I've learned independently. And same stuff. So, as far as the paranormal and BFRO reports, the reports we're getting are from the general public. They're not reports from people who have a lot of experience. And so the idea of orbs and mind speak and the woo stuff, the cloaking, that doesn't even show up in those reports. They don't connect those two. So all they're telling us is, I had this experience and I saw this thing, I heard this thing, but they would never even pay attention to what we would call the woo stuff. So some people have said that somebody is sitting there looking at these reports as they come in and chucking out the ones that have woo stuff in them. the most woo stuff, it's not even woo stuff that comes in with those reports, is people saying, well, there was some UFO activity going on at the same time too. And, I personally filter that out when if I've taken that report, I don't mention that part. It's not that I'm discounting it. It's just that that's where Matt wants to take it. Yeah. He wants it to be relevant to your average person out there. He knows all about the woo stuff too, but that is a choice of the demographic he wants to play to. And so that's what we do.
No, that makes a lot of sense, because like you said, the average person that doesn't follow Bigfoot, doesn't understand it, doesn't, like the leaves of the tree again, they're not putting that woo together. Right. They heard weird noises, they heard, or they saw this orb of light, blah, blah, blah in the woods, and then a Bigfoot walked out. Mm-hmm. Well, this doesn't have anything to do with this, right? It has no connection. I saw a Bigfoot. All this other stuff had nothing to do with that, and okay, I'm just going to tell them I saw a Bigfoot. And then until you start talking to these people and say, well, what else weird happened? Yeah. Oh, well, these rocks came flying through the woods and stuff. That was really weird. But then this big, hairy, person walked out. Well, wait a minute. You didn't put the rocks and the hairy person together? No. Why? And you have that disconnect of, you have to have those. And that's another thing, is where you can tell these people are being legit, because they're like, the person that's trying to hoax or fake or something. So you'll be like, these rocks came flying, and then I smelt this smell, and then, the Bigfoot walked out, and, and then the other ones are like, well, I didn't put that together at all. Right. You're like, oh yeah, okay, well, I believe you. Yeah. So.
And their emotions, they can't hide their emotions.
Absolutely.
If they really saw something, they can't hide that. There'll be tears, there'll be shaking, their voice cracks. They can't hide that emotion at all. But we never really got to talk about habituations, so we'll have to do another show. So
we will. This has been a blast. Absolutely. We have a comment or a question here for you, though.
Okay.
Johnny Ivy says, how do you deal with an unbelieving spouse when you really want to get into exploring for a sighting?
Well, that's a hard one. I know my spouse is a Bigfooter, so I don't have that problem. I suppose you don't try to convince them. You can't prove anything to somebody who hasn't actually done it or hasn't actually seen it. And once you've seen it, you're not a believer anymore. You're a knower. And I suppose you just ask them for the grace to let you go have fun with your insane pursuits. You can't convince another person who hasn't seen it, unless their mind is open to the idea of it. So that's a tough one. That's a hard one.
I was going to say, does your spouse like hiking or going outside in general? Because I think you would just start planning things like, we're going hiking on this trail. Oh, any reason? No reason. Let's just go down this trail.
Yeah.
And then things might start happening that they're going to start questioning on their own.
Yeah, they have to experience it themselves.
That natural curiosity kicks in, then you're going to have that door start opening to them, and just slowly put them in a position safely, and don't thrust them into it, but put them into opportunities to have those questions opened up to them.
I think that's the perfect answer. It's a good one.
Thank you.
Yeah. They have to experience it themselves. Everybody has to experience it for themselves.
Very good. Very good. Not so perfect Bigfoot show says woo is just a word to dismiss what others see. Yeah.
That's how it started. That's exactly how it started. It really came out around 2012 to 2013, at least here in Washington State. And sides were picked, and they started using the term woo-woo in the same way they call people a conspiracy theorist. It's to just neutralize their opinion.
Absolutely. Johnny says that she loves the outdoor stuff, and the minute he brings up Bigfoot, it's over. Yeah, like I said, take her out there hiking. in places that you want to go where you've had experiences and sightings or local reports and stuff, check out the BFRO, the Bigfoot Mapping Project. There's a lot of resources out there, and just find a location where there's been recent or a lot of sightings and just say, hey, let's go hiking here. Go camping out in those areas, because, Cliff Barrickman says, if you go out in the woods to look for Bigfoot, you're going to have a shitty time.
You
go
will.
out in the woods to experience the woods and spend time with people that you care about and have a good time. And whatever happens, you're going to have a good time. So keep that in mind as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And, maybe she's very, very afraid. And so trying to force her to face something like that, not a good idea.
Yep. Sometimes disbelief is masking something else.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
Very good.
Yeah.
Awesome. We have so much more to cover, but we are at the end of the show. If you guys have any last minute questions, throw them in there real quick. But Scott, other than the BFRO website, we got that in the show notes for you. Where else can people get a hold of you? You got any conventions you're speaking at?
Oh, I'll be over at the Sasquatch Summit over in Ocean Shores, Washington, in third weekend of November. I've been doing that fairly regularly since he started. It's a good one. We just had the Yakima Bigfoot Con. I didn't speak there this time. I did the previous time. That's one of the best. Highly recommend that. We have, there's coming up in June, I believe, is a town hall in the town of Packwood, Washington. Mel Scahan is organizing that. I think he's got something in the works with the Puyallup tribe. And he said he might try to involve me. Well, he said, you'll be the first one I call. So I have to pick and choose too. I have a spouse and a family life. I got to pick and choose what I do. And I can't be doing this every single weekend, every single day without getting in some hot water. But, that's as it should. Balance in life. And, I do other things, like as mentioned off the air, volunteer with the fire department and those kind of things. So, yeah, you can't let Bigfoot consume you.
Very cool. Yeah, I really wanted to come out. Like I said, I just had Mel on the show a couple months back, and he was talking about that. I correct me if I'm wrong, but he was supposed to have Gimlin out there on the Friday night before.
He did.
Yeah, I really wanted to come. I was literally going to come out there just for that night, because I have so many other events that I was doing this month for around here, and I really wanted to come out for that. I didn't make it.
Every moment we have with Bob is a treasure, because we are not going to have Bob much longer. He's becoming very frail, and his wife Judy is very protective of him. And but he was there. And it was good to see him. Everybody was all lined up to go have a picture taken with Bob Gimlin and get a hug and that kind of thing. But yeah, it's we're not going to have him around a whole lot longer, I don't think. He's 94, I believe, and just had his birthday this last month. So yeah, real treasure. Gonna miss him.
I really wanted to go out there for it, but I couldn't make it. So
yeah, he's family. He and Judy are families to us. So yeah.
You guys are lucky. You guys are lucky out there, man. So.
Oh yeah, very lucky to live in the area with the highest amount of sightings of anywhere. Yeah, and I don't ever want to live where they're not around. They're connected species. What one knows, it seems like they all know. So, and when you have that eyeball sighting up close, you're going to feel the connection and a pull towards them, and just let it be good with it. Just let it go and enjoy it. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, I will definitely have to have you back and actually talk about habituations. So
yeah, that's where the real knowledge is.
Absolutely. There's so much stuff to cover here. It's been an amazing show. Thank you so much, man. That's been awesome.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, we will talk to you later. Thanks for coming on today.
You take care. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, guys, that is our show for this week here. Scott is amazing, man. Go check out the BFRO. Obviously, you probably are familiar with it. If you haven't already, go check out the website. It's in the show notes. Check out some local sightings in your area. Take your non-believing spouse out and show them some Bigfooty good times. So sounds great. As you guys know, again, all the stuff that we got coming up for caps is in the show notes. So, no show notes on our website at wisconsincaps.com/public events. You can get all the details on everywhere that myself and my team are going to be coming up. And right now, we are doing a paranormal live investigation experiment. So, if you head on over to our YouTube channel, Wisconsin Caps, CAPS, you can go on our YouTube channel and watch a live experiment right now that we're conducting. And we just ask that you guys go in, and if you hear anything or see anything, just put it in the comments of when you saw it and heard it and what happened, just so that we have a record of it. But we'd really appreciate your help on that. So more on that coming up on Thursday. So on Thursday on the Paranormal Spectrum, we have Todd Bates is coming on to talk about EVPs and haunted voices. So that's this Thursday. We will be live on Halloween. So guys, thank you all for watching. Thank you all for tuning in. And until next time, guys, I'll see you on the end.